All right. Good afternoon, and welcome to our special webinar on how to craft an e-commerce solution that works for you with Origma's Customer Canvas. And today we'll be talking with Caleb Vanden Heuvel of Scottsdale, Arizona's Industry Print Solutions and his experiences working with Customers Canvas. But before we dive in, if you're familiar with our webinar series, some of our usual housekeeping items, we will have a Q&A at the end of this presentation, or even throughout the presentation. You're welcome to chime in with questions. There should be a Q&A box somewhere on your screen, so feel free to ask away, and we'll attempt to answer as many questions as we can during the Q&A period. And also, please use the Q&A box and not the chat box, because some of us are not very good at multitasking. This session is also being recorded, and the archive of today's presentation, both slides and audio, should be ready for download on our webinar site by the end of business today. And we'll dive in a moment, but our today's discussion will be led by the twin quasars of software, Pat McGrew and Ryan McAdoo. So I look forward to them later on. And today's session is sponsored by Aurigma, makers of Customers Canvas, your reliable web-to-print software. So we'll be hearing more about Customers Canvas throughout this presentation. So we've got a lot to talk about today. So without further ado, take it away, Pat and Ryan.
Great. So, Richard, you want to take the slides down for us because we're going to do this Brady Bunch style. Wonderful. So I want to thank the team at Origma Customer Canvas for finding a really fabulous customer for us to speak with in Caleb from Industry Print Solutions. Ryan and I are delighted to be here. I had no idea, Ryan, that we were quasars. This is
I don't
news
even
to me.
really know what a quasar is, but I'll have to look it up.
But I guess we'll be one, and away we go. So Anthony and Caleb, we are so thrilled to be able to share the story here. And it's really important because Anthony, of Origma Customers Canvas, you approach everything quite a bit differently than a lot of the other people who play in that web to print solutions market. So could you kind of introduce yourself and the story of Origma and Customers Canvas and why we should be listening to your story and Caleb's story?
Thanks, Pat. So we at Origma launched Customer Canvas in 2014. Initially, it was a web-to-print editor, but now it's rather a web-to-print platform that helps printers to build robust web-to-print applications based off popular e-commerce platforms or custom-built websites. I guess you can juxtapose all-in-one web-to-print solutions with Customer Canvas because we are bridging the gap between the first-class e-commerce platforms and automation requirements of print companies. Some of our customers are setting up web-to-print workflows for the first time, but most of them either replace a cheap product personalizer that cannot render PDFs consistently, or upgrade from a clunky software product developed by the big players in the industry. Integration-wise, we offer 5 front-end plugins for e-commerce platforms. Those are Shopify, Magento, WooCommerce, BigCommerce, and NetCommerce, and about a dozen APIs for custom integrations, both on the front end. The print files can be delivered over FTP or web. I mentioned that designers love support for shopping and design because they can drag and drop existing template library into Customer Canvas and continue to use these tools. Furthermore, our document models are so-called behaviors to kind of call program the templates via graphical user interface. With about
Hey, Anthony, just 1 second. You're kind of fading in and out a little bit, and I don't know if it's because you're leaning back in your chair or...
That's probably the case, yeah. About that.
So hug the screen, and I think we'll be able to hear you better.
So Adobe Photoshop and InDesign. So we support them natively to build the templates, and the designers can set up the behavior of those templates. This way we can extend the functionality of Photoshop and InDesign. So in essence, we aim at providing the best user experience for any product, starting with flyers and stickers, going all the way up to banners, TTG from products, and so on, making the ordering and production processes as easy and error-free as possible. I guess our high-profile customers enjoy in-depth documentation and versatile APIs, and our smaller but equally loved customers appreciate our professional services that include design, consulting, and implementation. So I believe this is the gist of what we do.
Perfect. So I know I love the fact that Customers Canvas kind of meets the printer on their journey with web to printer e-commerce, where they're at. And like you said, you can work with printers in a lot of different ways. They could either start from scratch, basically not have any kind of solution really, which is I think where Caleb started. We'll get into his story in just a little bit. Or you may have a full-blown system. You may be using a kind of generic e-commerce solution, like you mentioned with Magento and so forth. But you can integrate and work with the various parts at where they sit. I think, for probably a lot of the audience here, and certainly when I first heard of Customers Canvas years ago at this point, because we've been in the industry for a while, I instantly associate it with that kind of online design tool aspect. But Anthony, you do a lot more than that. You can really build the pipe, so to speak, of the entire platform and entire e-commerce, correct?
That's true. So in addition to the template-based scenario, we support also pre-flight-based because there is a pre-flight viewer. And sometimes it's mostly not about designing process per se, because require following guidelines where the end user actually has to be restricted to a certain way. And the job is to render an accurate pixel perfect proofs and render a PDF file. So on this point, the customer data or allow them to input them by hand and produce an accurate preview instance.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because obviously an accurate preview, that's something you want to have as the end customer, make sure what you think you're going to get is actually what you're going to get when it comes out in production.
So Anthony, we're still having a little bit of trouble hearing you. And so what I want to suggest is, Ryan, can we turn towards Caleb for a second?
Absolutely.
And Anthony, maybe you can reset your connection or dial back in, because you're dropping out every few words, and we want to make sure we hear everything you have to say.
Sure.
Great, thank you. Great, thank you. So, Ryan.
All right, so Caleb, tell us a little bit about what your shop is. Obviously, Industry Print Solutions, but how you came to be. You've been in existence for quite some years now. How that's evolved as you've gone on the journey, because I think it's kind of an interesting story that we don't we hear sometimes, when we know that printers expand into different product categories as time has gone on because the technology is accessible, but you kind of have to figure out the secret sauce, so to speak, to bring not only that equipment piece, but with the customers' demands, what they actually want to have produced, and figure out a way to how to make that happen within the constraints of a production environment, right? Because you don't have a limited number of people that you can basically throw at the problem, right?
Yeah, so we started out as basically pick and pack for a company called Plexus, which is also who we run our web portal for, or one of our web portals for. And we just started grabbing all those printed supplies, putting them in boxes, and then shipping them out. Well, then that turned into getting a big printer. Then we're printing the stuff that we're picking and packing. And then it kind of evolved from there. We get different cutters and things like that. And then all of a sudden, we're no longer picking and packing. We're just doing the printing. They pick and pack elsewhere. Then we acquire a DTG machine and an embroidery company, and it kind of just starts to build and build. And then clients, word of mouth, you get yourself out on Google, Yelp, all the fun stuff, and you kind of just start to snowball, get different projects. We like to say yes, and we're not risk adverse. So we like to kind of grab a bunch of different projects, try to collaborate with other companies, and or just try to find a way to do it in-house, and kind of learn from all those different processes and really that collaboration is kind of what got us into these little areas is, well, let's see what this company will do and how they did it. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Like we could definitely manage that. And we just kind of snowballed and kept building up not only our resume, but our client list as well.
That's wonderful. And just for some context here, you're located in the Southwest, correct? And what does that kind of customer base look like? Do you mainly deal with people in the Southwest? Do you deal with them nationally? Give us a little flavor of that.
So we kind of get a good mix. A lot of what we do kind of as our bread and butter is the online bigger portals, but then we also do a lot of custom embroidery for golf shops. A lot of golf courses. Being so close to TPC Scottsdale, we are, kind of in that hub of the golf world. So we do a lot of golf. We've done a lot of real estate. I mean, we kind of keep it broad. We do have some customers from kind of all over. We're doing shirts for TED right now, like TED Talk, that kind of thing. So, being able to kind of have our word of mouth kind of in the industry helps us get interesting and different jobs kind of all around.
I think you definitely follow the industry mantra, which is say yes, and then let's make it happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And Caleb, when you look at the customers that you're serving, they have a lot of different kinds of needs. So as you were trying to decide how you were going to serve those needs, how did you meet up with the Customers Canvas solution?
Yeah, so our meetup with Customers Canvas came out of basically simplification, because we wanted to streamline a way to interact with our web portal and have the end user create something custom without necessarily breaking brand standards. So we were basically collecting information from all these people that wanted business cards, pamphlets, trifolds, banners, all of the print material that would go along with some of their marketing items. And what we would do as designers, we would have to make those items, proof those items, wait to hear back, make any changes, then send it to our production team who would run it. But with Customers Canvas, we were looking for a solution that would allow the customer to take some of that responsibility. So like you said, you get to see your high res proof. We actually upload a Photoshop mockup. It puts that layer on the proper spot for the business cards or the trifolds or things like that. So not only can they see realistically to scale what it's going to look like, but also their information on that piece of marketing material. And then they actually click, I approve, that's what they want. And that's how it's kind of in there. But we can make changes on the fly and stuff. But if you're missing your phone number, you should have seen it a couple times.
So self-service is a really important feature there, because the more the customer does, the less you have to do.
Exactly.
So how hard was it to integrate? I mean, when you're setting out to work with a new vendor and you're trying to build something that's going to be so material to your business, I would imagine that there's a lot of discovery that has to go on.
Yeah. So some of that was figuring out, speaking with their team, because we did have to collaborate a lot with them. So we were in pretty regular conversations about, what's our best method to get you the files, or then we learned how to upload the files ourselves. So it kind of started as a back and forth, us learning from them and then them learning from us as far as what we needed, and like locking backgrounds while still having them be high quality vector assets, so that in print production, we get our high res files on the out. And learning how to lock those things down was pretty important. And then, just exploring, our client as Plexus and the end user, which is a representative, has to have, we have to be that barrier and that standard for them. We can't just, they were before just going anywhere, getting any type of business card. Now we have, a set standard guidelines of, what their items can be.
That's great. So Anthony, welcome back. We hope that the sound is better now.
How does it sound?
You sound brilliant.
Awesome.
So
I have 3 microphones and I used the wrong one all along.
Okay, so we were just talking to Caleb about the journey that brought the two companies together, and the kinds of things that he learned from you in order to be able to work with you to be more successful, because they sort of took Caleb, it sounds like Field of Dreams. You built it and people came, which was great. But Anthony, from the customer canvas side, when you set out to work with someone like Caleb, how do you start the discovery process?
It's quite a challenge, to be honest, because every time is a little bit different. So yeah, we have a process to assess the requirements and see, and we kind of have some expectation on what they do. However, most of the time, our customers or to-be customers already tried something else, and they come to us and say, we want something special because this and that, and it's usually takes several weeks for both of us to realize what's the best approach and where the possibilities meet needs and meet wants. But I would say it's a collaborative process. So they tell our story and their needs. We tell more about the platform. Typically, we try to build a kind of proof of concept, so sort of, and based on those findings, we plan the project.
I think that's wonderful, because what happens so often in the industry is and this is throughout software in the industry, generally speaking, is that a lot of times you've got, the salesperson who's selling the solution, you've got the customer on the other end who has the needs, and often those communication processes kind of don't overlap exactly perfect. So I think the added step that you do with the proof of concept really helps, because that validates, hey, did I hear this correctly? Is this really what you're looking for? Is this really what you need the solution to do for your customers? And that's a whole nother step that kind of gets you to where you can pivot. Like if it doesn't actually do what it's supposed to do out of the gate, you're not wasting a lot of time. You're not getting people frustrated on the customer end, which is the worst case scenario, or even internally within the print shop. You can make sure that it's functioning as you would expect it to before you go forward, and then you can launch and have a successful launch of that at that point, which I think is a struggle within this space in the industry that we see from time to time. I also, Pat, I want to go back to what Caleb said, because it's a huge point, and I wasn't able to kind of interject and be like, wow, that's people should really take this away. And that is the fact that with a solution like Customers Canvas, you can basically create the design within brand guidelines that the customer wants to have, their color set, their font set, their image library, all these kind of functions and pieces that go into the design. But what that also does, and it's often an overlooked thing, but it's a major thing from the production side of the print operation, is that you're then able to get a reliable file that's coming into you that may have not have been the case if it was designed in some other application, some other online design tool, or if they were just grabbing bits and pieces, or if maybe they grabbed the font and the font was licensed and you restricted and you couldn't actually produce it on the RIP, and all this other kind of production chaos that we know that can happen. So the fact that web to print standardizes the incoming file set to some extent, and like what Anthony was saying, you can pre-flight on top of that. I think that's a huge point.
And Caleb, can you go back to that for a second, because it sounds to me that one of the things that you've gained here with the addition of Customers Canvas to your environment is that certainty that you will be able to produce the files. How does that change your approach to your customers and your production job scheduling?
Yeah, so Customers Canvas actually did a really great thing and helped us out by building a production application that our production team has that connects to the back end. And we set the file location. You can hit download, and it downloads all the files that aren't in that folder. So it actually recognizes what's in that folder, what's not in that folder. So all new files get added in. And that way it's the, 300 DPI, PDF, bleed, all the fun stuff. and it's all in one folder with one seamless download. So they don't have to be clicking multiple links. They don't have to go multiple places. You can code in the order ID, customer name, amount of things that were in the order, so that the file name has some sort of relevance to what's going on as well. And our production team absolutely loves it because they're no longer, in our CRM system looking for one line, getting notified a million times. It's one thing that they check in the morning, they download all the files, they prep them up on the printer, and kind of address that. So for them, it's saved a bunch of time, let alone just the design side.
Okay, let me ask a funny question. So our very good friend Carrie Sherborne popped a question up that was kind of tickling in the back of my mind, but she articulated it very well. She said, sometimes when people bring web to print into their environment, they struggle with their sales team because sometimes the sales team struggles with the web to print environment, and sometimes they struggle with convincing customers to actually load what's needed into that web to print system so that they can actually use the system to its fullest extent. How has your team embraced it, or did you have some struggles as you were bringing it all online?
Yeah, so a lot of it, we do have to kind of be cognizant of the quality of things that are going in, and you can set, warnings and things like that. So it pops up, like you can set a minimum DPI warning. Otherwise, it flashes a big old thing on the user's end, hey, this is low res. There are certain things that, I in my personal opinion, I believe are unavoidable, right? If they upload a terrible JPEG and they want it printed, I mean, unless you intervene and you see that file and you have that conversation with them, there's not a whole lot, it's inputs, outputs, and the system does a really good job of flagging and guiding customers, but there's only so much you can
do. But it won't do it for them, right?
Yeah.
It won't make decisions for them. So do you have a sales team that actually goes out and interacts with your customers to help them use the tool effectively, or how does a customer get good at it?
So a lot of what we have is kind of guided for one specific client. So we have that template-based system.
Okay.
But the more broad general web to print where customers would be uploading, we don't have a sales team specifically focused on that a whole lot. But it is something that we've looked into, and we've tried to do some pre-flight stuff and looked into some solutions there. Like I kind of covered, it's one thing to have them upload it. But we always kind of want to have that final look over of like, hey, this is going on our machine, all that fun stuff. We like to still have the final look at things. So we see it more as like a pre-flight tool, and starting that conversation. So gathering that information. Okay, this is what they uploaded. It's not so great. Let's start a conversation with them. Do we have any better files or anything like that?
And Pat, as a salesperson myself, I think there's always this thing about nobody wants to be replaced with a piece of software or machinery. And sometimes salespeople think that this is a replacement, so to make them redundant, and not always realizing that this is an empowering tool. Because as a salesperson myself, I do use automation, for example, for automated reach out. It doesn't make me redundant, but increase my productivity, because what can be automated should be automated. At the end of the day, Gutenberg invented print press. And this is why this industry exists. And people not always realize that.
I think, Anthony, I'm sorry, Ryan, let me ask the other part of Carrie's question, though, because Anthony, what's the challenge of when you're working with customers who maybe do have sales teams who hold client relationships? What's their relationship in terms of getting the customer to actually buy into using the tool and populating the catalogs to make the tool as effective as it can possibly be?
Mostly is the requirements gathering process, because and it's quite surprising to me. A lot of our customers calling names their customers. They're saying that they're too. It would be too hard to set up the process for them because it's so versatile and they are so unpredictable in their needs and things like that. I think that's the most challenging thing because people are maybe this is kind of some sort of FOMO.
Yeah.
Because
If they don't
think,
touch everything, that something will go wrong.
Yeah, and the crucial thing is to realize that if you can automate 80% or either 50% of the repetitive, mindless work, you are win.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So I'm sorry, Ryan, I cut you off.
No, I think what bigger picture that both Caleb and Anthony were just describing there was this difficulty with job onboarding, as we like to call it, Pat, and that's basically getting the customer's requirements accurately, because that's a challenge in and of itself, and then marrying that up with the creative content and any data that you might need if you're doing variable data to be able to then produce it, and then doing those kind of checks and balances up front during that process too, whether it's pre-flighting, checking it over manually like Caleb was saying to make sure it's going to be good enough to print before you get into production. The thing that I think that this will speak to that as well, is that the augmenting of your labor instead of the replacement and the fear of being replaced. I think Caleb has a spot on when we talked to him earlier, and I want to get it to share it now. When we talked to you earlier, Caleb, you said that some of your core services that you offer obviously are digital printing in all of its facets that you mentioned before, where there's trifold brochures to posters to this and that. You also do apparel like DTG garment printing, but you also do embroidery, and you also offer graphic design. And I thought one of the interesting things that you had mentioned was how, because of Customer Canvas, it freed up a lot of time for your designers to focus on the stuff that matters, the real value add, the stuff that a computer or another person can't do, right? And maybe talk to us a little bit about that.
100%. So it's stuff that's allowed us to kind of focus on expanding our reach, or as a creative graphic designer myself, like I get to go and focus on different logo projects or different things entirely, and not have to worry about, is, Mike going to get his proof back to me so that I can produce the file and get that rolling, or have a bunch of stuff in my inbox constantly. So it's something that, peace of mind, it's out of sight, out of mind, but in motion. So it's something that is always kind of moving, something you don't have to worry about, and allows you to use your time elsewhere, which, as a small business, we have myself and one other graphic designer on the whole team for our whole business. And we do all the web design, all the print design, all the graphic design, everything related with everything digital and production setup we handle. So having that off our plate has allowed us to expand our image elsewhere and kind of use that time effectively.
And the before and after, if I remember correctly, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like it was almost half another employee that you saved in the before and after in that design process, so that you could focus on the more value added design. I think it was like anywhere from 20 to 30 hours a week, roughly, that you were saving, right? Yeah.
We just, between the setups and the communication back and forth, and it was huge. And it's something that primarily, would take up, it depends, right? There's ebbs and flows. But a lot of the time it was a lot. And it was something that you kind of have to balance and try to do other client work while you're mixing that in. So that kind of also prolongs it, because you're putting some stuff on the back burner and just trying to juggle all that, especially as stuff that, like you said, it is, if you can automate those repetitive processes, it's something that is very freeing and allows you to focus on other things.
Do you have a sense, Caleb, of the time, from the time in your prior to Customers Canvas, how long it took for a job to get from the time the job was contracted to the time it was ready for press, versus where you are now with Customers Canvas?
Yeah, to what it was before, I mean, there's so many variables just because you enter the proof process, and sometimes you have to look at the number on the business card and give them a call because the email, they're just not getting back to you or things like that. But if it was a smooth process, I'd say it was potentially 35 to an hour, just if there's any changes or things like that. And once you open up that conversation, people like to get a little giddy with their changes too. So now you're doing a different business card than what you started with and all that fun stuff. But with this automated process, I mean, it's instant. The second they place their order, it's in our production and they can schedule that out. So that's something that's really nice too, is there's really no delay there. As far as the second they see that pre-production proof in the web builder, they hit order, that file is instantly created and sent off to production.
Was there
And
any
it sounds-
resistance? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Was there any resistance to getting all that stuff loaded into the system so they could do it themselves?
No, so that was something that we really, I guess, we didn't get a lot of pushback. We just helped guide people through the system. So it wasn't really a big learning curve. Every once in a while you get people that don't know how to work a mouse. You just walk them through that stuff, but that's different, and you deal with those in every facet of your business. But other than that, I think people find it very intuitive, and we don't get a lot of basic questions. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Some people try to do something a little bit more custom, and we have to have that conversation with them. But I think it's been a really clean solution and had really good feedback as far as them being able to see their product without having to go back and forth. And yeah, it's been positive.
Great.
I was just going to say, it seemed to, as you're talking there, Caleb, other than having a more standard file to work with as it's coming in now through Customer Canvas, the other thing that seems to be saving you a ton of time versus where you were at before was this kind of customer interaction, customer handholding, however you want to put it. Often in the industry, we call it the proofing and approval stage, but that seems like it's really done two things probably. Has it shortened the production time cycle where you can get things done faster, and then maybe also freed up your time and other people's time in the shop to focus on those other things as well?
Definitely, because a lot of our end users aren't in the industry, so they don't know the term bleed. They won't understand that. They don't know the word color profile. They don't understand that their screen builds light a different way than the ink is put on the page. So that color isn't going to be that bright. Things don't glow when you print them. But so it's really simplified that interaction and made it more of a customer facing, someone that doesn't typically interact with these things. It's really simplified that process. As far as, I kind of see it like the Nike shoe editor back in the day when everyone would go make their custom shoes. It's similar to that process where you can interact with it. And you don't necessarily need to talk to someone about what that's going to look like or how that's going to be. It's just going to go.
And you offer that personalization aspect too, right? A lot of your product set is not only custom within brand design guidelines, but they can customize pieces for their needs as well, right?
Yeah. So there's some aspects that they can change, and then we've had other collaborations with Customers Canvas where we did real estate, where they have to upload their group logo versus, what I mean? So we've had a couple different, use cases for it, and some more custom than others, but we've kind of found our niche for it, at least as far as, keeping consistent branding and speeding up the process.
We have a question on the hotline. Maria would like to know about impositioning. So is that something that gets done within the Customers Canvas platform?
Sometimes. So
Okay.
we support so-called template-based imposition. So if you create a Photoshop file with placeholders, you can impose the print files. However, if you need some sort of rule and you need a complex imposition, if it's for example, brochure, and you need to properly align the pages because it's two-sided, things like that. Typically, it's done by a piece of software down the line. So we provide that PDF file, and typically it hits something like Caldera or in Focus Switch or another or Fieri, and then it's imposed and maybe done
Okay.
post-processing.
All right. Thank you very much. So Maria, you have your answer.
And Caleb, maybe you can share how that happens in your shop. I imagine that you probably use a workflow tool attached to your digital front end or something like that.
Yeah, so we use I believe it's Fiery or Fury.
Fiery.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that is what our production team uses. And they typically will drag things in and impose that way. So
and the good thing is that to further go to Maria's question is that there's many different imposition tools in the marketplace, and all have their strengths and weaknesses in terms of our feature sets, what they're really good at, and how they operate within the greater workflow that you've created.
So we had,
looks like we have
yes. So the follow-up question, and Anthony, I think this one comes back to you. The question Aaron is asking us is about impositions for saddle stitch booklets that have a variable number of pages. But I think maybe the answer is the same, that it's still a downstream process.
Yes, typically, yes.
Okay. So, Aaron, it can be your favorite digital front ends imposition solution, or it might be one of the other
great standalone tools that are in the market, right?
Yeah, and there are lots of really great standalone tools. If you have questions, let us know, and we'll get back to you afterwards, and be happy to point you to a few. So, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. And
No.
this is kind of part of our philosophy behind the product, because what's the point of replacing other great tools? And
Excellent.
that's why we are trying to bridge the gap and bring something new to the market, and work as more like a thing that can connect things that are already there, but might be not playing well together.
Really good. So, Ryan, one of the other things we hear people talk about all the time is the fun of connecting to e-commerce platforms. You want to jump in there?
Yeah, and by that you mean like Magento, Shopify, those type of
all the
general
ones
purpose
we
ones?
know, all the ones we've heard of, and things we've never heard of.
Yeah, I mean, the good things about those platforms is that they're ubiquitous, so they're out there in the tens of thousands of install bases, and that it's a more of a kind of open platform where a lot of development can go on just for the e-commerce piece or just for the taxation of the product piece, and there's all these different things you can bolt on from different companies. And I think this is where Customer Canvas comes into the picture too, because what they don't have natively, and they probably never will have natively, is something that they're just not good at, and that's the print piece of it and the product customization piece of it. And that's where something like Customer Canvas would come in, that you can bolt on the top of it, so to speak, and get that to where you can your customer can log in. You can create these basically brand controls so that they can color in the lines, so to speak, in terms of building their products, and then they can set the quantities, and that it knows what a page is versus some 16-page saddle stitch brochure, because Shopify is not going to know that to the question that we had before. So it adds that print component to this. And Anthony, I don't know if you want to share in terms of how you do work with these general e-commerce sites and kind of have done that in the past, but it'd probably be helpful.
That's actually not that complicated, because everything
it's not complicated for you.
right
it's not complicated in theory. It's in practice, theory doesn't always match practice, but in theory it does. So everything that is handled by default by the e-commerce still handled by the e-commerce. Pricing, discounts, product catalog, search engine optimization, and things like that. So we typically just kind of hijack the ordering process right before they go to the shopping cart, because we are basically saying to the e-commerce, hold on, we need one more detail about the order, and that's going to be the personalization information. And based on that personalization session, we'll attach the link to the print file, the proofs and options that were selected to the order. And that's why it kind of seamlessly works with the e-commerce, because for the system is just some sort of new metadata. It's unaware of it, why it is just there. And we still can we can still leverage the things that are already there, like discounts and other things. So yeah.
Okay. So Caleb, how much time does it take on your side to actually maintain the environment, to, make sure that your pricing is up to date and that your, what you just paid for substrates is actually accounted for in your estimates and what you're charging people?
Yeah, so that's something that we look at quarterly. Just kind of kind of across the board, honestly, with everything we do in our business, we like to just take a step back, and adjust those things. We kind of have to build the plane as we're flying it, obviously. So those things happen kind of incrementally, not all at once, but, we'll look at, okay, business card pricing, whether they walk through the door or they're buying on an online portal, that's our new business card pricing. So things like that are pretty easy to maintain. And that's just, for us personally, it's Shopify interface. So we build the products, we make the mockups, and then through the customer's Canvas backend, that item actually links itself to a file system in their backend. So when they click design product, it brings them to the right editor, right? Like you said before they get to the cart, it kind of wedges itself in and allows you to go through that building and proofing process there.
And that makes sure that the pricing is correct at the point where they're placing the order.
Yeah, that's all just as if you were building selling a single thing on, anything on a web platform like that, where you're doing all of that kind of in your own Shopify backend.
Okay, that makes sense. How much time does it take to keep it maintained, would you say? Is it easier than what you were doing before, or does it add a little bit more time to the maintenance cycle of keeping all your systems up to date?
No, I would say, it's something that we've always done. I mean, with rising prices of things, it's something that just, as a business, we have to stay on. Otherwise, all of a sudden we're busy as heck, and it's because we're the cheapest in town.
Any money? For 2023, will a quarterly cadence still work for you?
I believe so. And it's not something that it's so hard and like, let's stop everything, don't take orders, we're going to take a look at it. It is kind of, ebbs and flows. Yeah. And we try to find averages, and sometimes we find new supply. It's kind of a balance of things where, you make sure you're finding like for like products or things that are replacing the things to kind of maintain prices as best you can and updating price that way.
Makes sense.
Caleb, we've talked a lot about how you use the system and the benefits that it's brought to you. I'm going to kind of throw a future leading question at you, and that is because we know a print shop and any business is not static. You want to move to a certain way. Your customers pull you in different directions. All these kind of things. You add new products, et cetera, et cetera. What are you excited about growing and adding and basically evolving out, because you have this customer canvas solution now and you know how it's worked, and how else are you thinking the gears turning about applying it in different and new ways or across your product set and so forth?
Yeah, totally. So like I said, we've done an integration before that was real estate. That's 2418, 2436, all these big platforms. So you can take advantage of this tool in so many different ways, as far as, they collaborate with you. So it's something is, if you're running a print file, you can build it in their tool and automate it, you know what I mean? And then build all the guidelines. So it's something that, you can use the tool to enable yourself to move forward, or you can use the tool to allow yourself to move outside of that and move forward. Either way, you can actually do both if you wanted to, where, you know, we found uses for the tool to grow our business that way, as well as outside of the tool. So it kind of is a double-edged sword that is, it's pretty helpful.
So as you start to look forward, Anthony, towards how you're going to approach the rest of 2023, are there any cool, interesting new things that we should be watching for Customers Canvas to add to your toolkit?
I guess the major thing that we are looking into is which is kind of code named product information management. We want to bring a more elaborate product management capabilities that would allow small teams to manage really wide, big catalogs with wide range of products. Because with print shops, the thing is that you have paper, and you can you can do a lot of things with the paper, and the product is actually usually just a multiplication of all the things that you can do with that paper or any other substrate, truth to be told. And what we are trying to help our customers with is to give them a better user experience on the back end. So a team of 2 or maybe 2 or 3 people can keep up to date a catalog of 1,000 SKUs or so without breaking their neck. And as you correctly mentioned, in this volatile market, when you have to adjust quickly, maybe introduce new products, it's quite important.
We've heard from people who do catalogs that sometimes it can take them 18 months to build a catalog. And by the time they have the catalog built, it's already out of date because they've already added so many more things. So the idea of finding a path to a tool that would make it faster, that sounds like a winning idea to me. It seems like there's a lot of call for that, because even internet companies, you know, e-commerce companies that only sell online are turning to catalogs as a way to sell. Even Amazon sends me a catalog. So it sounds like that could be a really winning solution. Are there other things that you're looking at?
By product catalog, actually meant the online catalog, because on the storefront, typically, so case in point, we have a customer, a big one. They have, say, a couple hundred SKUs, but the template variety is huge, 20 or 40,000. So it's Vistaprint level of variety. They have, I believe, a team of 7 or 8 people that've been working for 5 years on this template library. So when you want to compete with the big players and you're a smaller team, it's quite a challenge, because you don't have thousands of man hours of work to put into keeping all up to date and properly set up. So we want to empower those smaller players in the market by giving them a tool that would multiply the output of content managers.
So product information management for the templates that are in the library that the customer's managing.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds like a really great idea.
I think the way to visualize it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony, but from my understanding of what you're doing is take Caleb's example of that real estate sign. That's one product per se, but you need 15 SKUs because it could come in 15 different sizes or 15 different colors or whatever. There's multiple iterations, and so this product management tool is going to make it much simpler to basically create those iterations, but also I think update changes that you need across a product or the number of SKUs that you need to do, whether it's a price change or it's a format size change or whatever else. So it's just the speed that, because when you do get to a certain level of products and SKUs, however you want to think of those terms, it gets a little bit unwieldy if you have to go into each instance of that to make a change. And I think that's what Anthony's talking about, right?
Exactly.
That sounds right. Okay.
Yeah. The main challenge is the discrepancy between e-commerce important details, production important details, and customer important details, because business cards, they can be horizontal and vertical. It's the same thing. It's just was turned around. You wouldn't have a SKU for that, but you need to have it as an option. And the e-commerce doesn't need to know that option, nor your production team, because it's the same size of the business card. And this is what we are trying to kind of map between those systems. And that's why we have kind of different kind of options. Those that related to pricing, those that are not related to pricing but are important for the production team, because maybe it's different substrate but it's same price. And things that should be visualized, but they actually don't need to be reflected in the production file or production metadata. Okay,
that makes sense. So we're coming up on the top of the hour. We've got about 10 minutes left. And Richard, I think we've been answering the questions as we go along. So it seems like we're in pretty good shape, but I'll double check with you to see if there's anything we need to address.
No, if anybody has any further questions, by all means, use the Q&A box and send them in, but looks like we pretty much covered the waterfront.
Good. And I wanted to give Caleb, is there any last word that you would give anyone about, working with Customers Canvas, what your experience has been?
Yeah, I would just say start the conversation, see where they see themselves with you. I mean, it's something that, we reached out to a couple different places and they really built the vision with us and allowed us to feel comfortable moving forward with them and creating something that we knew we were going to use for a long time. So it's something that, just start the conversation.
Great idea.
And Caleb, just a plug here. Where can people find out more about you and the company and what you do? Maybe a website is a good place to point them to.
So our URL is hello, HELLOIPS, IndiaPaulSierra.com. Otherwise, you can just Google Industry Print Solutions, and I hope we're the first one.
So helloips.com is where people find you.
Yep.
Okay, we love that. And Richard, can you pop to that next very lovely Customers Canvas slide? And Anthony, for people who want to start the conversation with Origma and Customers Canvas, we've got some information on the screen, but what's the best way to reach out to you?
Just go to our website. We have a lot of call to action buttons. You can watch online demos, play around with storefronts that are there, so you can get your hands on it. And if what you see looks interesting, feel free to reach out us by sending an email at sales@Origma or clicking button, contact us, and we'll
reach back out and set up a call. Right. So I think, Ryan, for us, I mean, my conclusion is if you're one of those organizations that is looking at web to print and you have specialized needs like Caleb's dealing with multi-level marketing organizations and other types of clients that have specialized needs, it is definitely worth taking the time to talk to an organization that can listen to your specific requirements and not try to fit you into a box that's already built.
Yeah, I think that's the key here is that you probably have this gut feeling that you know you have something, but it may not be the optimal place you want to be in. And because Customers Canvas can meet you wherever you're at on your e-commerce journey and kind of get you to the next level, and they do that through a very consultative approach, which is always nice with the proof of concept that we had talked about before. I think that gives you a lot of comfort level to go forward and make that next step in your e-commerce journey, because let's face it, it's not going away. And if you haven't figured out how to play in this space, it's time to do that.
I think that is excellent. So with that, Caleb, thank you so much for sharing so much with us. I think that it has been so valuable. And Anthony, thank you so much for all the information and the insight that you've given us. And with that, Richard, we're going to hand it back to you.
All righty. Well, we are still hashing out our webinar series for 2023, but I can say that tentatively we'll be taking another look at software on February 22nd. So keep an eye out to at what they think for more information as that happens. And we'll share our schedule as soon as we figure out what that is. So it just remains for me to thank Pat and Ryan for leading today's discussion. Thank you very much. Thanks to Caleb from IPS for sharing your experiences. And thanks to Anthony from Aurigma for talking about Customers Canvas. Thanks to Origma for sponsoring this session, and thank you all for attending. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.